The salmonella outbreak is still spreading through the country tonight. More than 160 new cases reported. The Food and Drug Administration tonight says the outbreak is related to tomatoes and that those tomatoes most likely come from Florida or Mexico. As Louise Schiavone now reports, the FDA is finally sending inspectors to Mexico and Florida.
Add more victims to the nation's salmonella outbreak.
Since April, there now have been 552 persons identified with Salmonella St. Paul with the same genetic fingerprint.
The outbreak covers 32 states and Washington, D.C., with almost half of the cases from Texas. The Centers for Disease Control says, considering unreported cases, it's likely that thousands of people have been affected. Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration says it's ready to put inspectors on the ground.
FDA is sending teams of multidisciplinary experts to both Mexico and Florida this weekend with the goal of conducting joint inspections on the farms and throughout the distribution chain.
The nation's billion-dollar-a-year tomato farming business has lost tens of millions of dollars in the outbreak, which so far has not triggered a product recall from the FDA.
Are you certain, given the status of this investigation, that the source of the Salmonella St. Paul outbreak is in fact tomatoes? You don't have a tomato sample yet that you're working from, right?
We do not have a positive salmonella in tomatoes.
To this former director of FDA import operations, that doesn't make sense.
What do we know about the conditions? What do we know about the water? Little information is known. The government has a tendency then to more or less swoop everybody into the same group, make everybody suffer.
The CDC insists it does not have a list of possible sources in this outbreak. It believes tomatoes are the culprit, although so far no testing has turned up the salmonella strain on any tomatoes. Lou, authorities say the problem may not exist on a farm, but in a packing shed, a warehouse, or a distribution center. And working with Homeland Security, they have not ruled out the possibility of a deliberate contamination, but the FDA stresses at this point there's no evidence of that. Lou?
Well, there's not, for that matter, even any evidence of salmonella. I mean, it is absolutely confounding to think that these are intelligent, presumably educated, well-informed, well-meaning people running the FDA.
Well, there is evidence of salmonella, as we know, Lou, but we don't have evidence. We don't have hard evidence
in the
off of a tomato, right?
And this is, okay, let's back up here. The FDA doesn't know where the salmonella came from. The FDA doesn't have any positive evidence in a tomato of salmonella. They don't know anything about the distribution system. They don't know anything about the packing operations. The farms themselves are only this weekend sending inspectors into the field. You'll recall I suggested they might do that here yesterday, might go to the tomato farms in Mexico and Florida to find out. Now they're saying that this outbreak, its origins are in both Florida and Mexico. That defies credulity.
They say that there are possible links to farms in Florida and or Mexico. So what they want to find out through their traceback system and through examining the soil and the farming conditions, I guess, in both places on particular farms in both locations is what were the growing conditions? What was the path? Did they perhaps, these crops from Mexico and Florida, cross at some point and wind up together in a distribution shed or a warehouse or a packing center?
What are the implications, as you report, or in the FDA reports? Half of these cases, more than 500 cases that we know of, and they suspected that, what is the ratio, 50 to each one reported? That
there are 30 or more for each one.
Okay,
some say 40.
Okay, 30, 40,
so
whatever the number is,
and
thousands. But we know of the 500 definitively and definitely reported.
552.
Those, half of them, are in the state of Texas.
265 from the state of Texas.
What is the explanation by the FDA, the Centers for Disease Control, for the fact that there are so many within one state?
They say that...
And how would Florida get involved in a Texas situation.
Right. There are there are just so many questions about this, and they themselves say that it would be almost impossible, not utterly impossible, but highly unlikely for this Salmonella St. Paul with the same genetic fingerprint to exist both in Mexico and Florida. They just don't know.
Why did they make that statement tonight? I'm asking you a question. Right. I know you've asked this question 100 times of them. It's terrific reporting, but this is just unbelievable. Sheer, brazen incompetence. Thank you very much. Louise Schiavone. We will, of course, have more as it becomes available. Keep digging. We appreciate it.